Welcome to Resilience plus Rise, the podcast wherein we talk about adversities, challenging adversities, breaking boundaries. If you feel there is a pull from where life has thrown you to be, you come to the right space because it's on this podcast we talk to incredible humans who have not allowed their life to overcome them, but they have stood tall and broken the mindset barriers to go way more further than what they could be doing or what we are doing. Today, I have an incredible human. Actually, I had called Christina a few months back, and I had to get back to her again because she's just launching a book which is going to be coming up in 2 days, 48 hours, a little more than 48 hours. And this is one of the exclusive sneak peek conversations that we are having. So, Christina Simmons, we talk about adversities. Guys, pause over here and listen to her. And then you maybe want to create a benchmark about what adversities are in your own life. The resilience, the grit, the determination to take one step at a time has made a difference, not only to Christina, but as a leader, the people that she inspires, and hopefully millions others that comes along with her book that she's coming up now. She would be a torchbearer for many. So, Christina Simmons, welcome to Resilience Plus Rise, the podcast.
Thank you for having me back. This is so fun. I just enjoy talking with you and seeing you, and I'm just grateful for our friendship. And it's just crazy how you can meet people from all around the world and be
True.
so connected to them. I mean, I think sometimes we look at social media as negative sometimes, but I love social media and podcasting because of that, because we can really find friendships that we never would have had. So, very grateful for you.
Thank you. And I always say is that there are no strangers, only friends we have not met. And again, when we talk about connectedness, it's end of the day, it is about humanness. I believe the concept of humanness, once you take out the layers, it connects people more deeper. And again, my remark which I say is that we all are angels with one wing. When we hold another, that's when we fly higher. And I know you have been an inspiration for many. So let's start. First and foremost, congratulations on getting your book, Eat Your Emotions, which will be, as I mentioned, in a little more than 48 hours. So tell me why? Because most of the time, that's one of the questions which I ask a writer or author. Why this book? Tell me your story.
So I had been wanting to write this book for probably about 10 years. And I know I wanted to ask you that question too, like how long had you been hearing like the pull to write your book? But I just had like this little whisper, write the book, write the book. And for a long time, I felt like our story wasn't finished. And, but what I came to realize is that by not telling my story, who out there wouldn't be able to benefit. Like at first, it was kind of one of those things like who would care to hear what I wanted to say, or, my story isn't any bigger or more profound than anybody else's, but all of our stories, they're only ours and only we can tell them like we can. And we're meant to help specific people. So now I have like this overwhelming sense of obligation to tell my story, to give God's glory and to spread his message. And I've been doing a ton of these podcasts and I was on one the other day that was a little bit, it was about birth trauma, and because that's a big part of our story, but her podcast is specific to that. And what God dropped into my spirit, like right there, was that a lot of people need miracles in order to really know that he exists. And so I've had a lot of miracles happen in my life. And I think it's just perspective on how you look at things. And well, to me, anything can be a miracle. The sun coming up is a miracle. The flowers growing are a miracle. Like, you know what I mean? So if you have that outlook on life, then what we've been through is just something that we go through and we learn from it.
Amazing, amazing. And guys, when you just heard that, okay, Christina Simmons, she talks about miracles in her life. So you think it has been kind of easy. Christina, I've already had the conversation with you on the miracles or the other part of your story. But what's your story for the people who may be tuning for the first time? Why was there a pull to write this book? What was, because I always believe is that from the deepest of our pains shines the brightest of our lights. And our purpose usually comes from the wounds which goes very deep within our own hearts or mind. So what is that story?
It started with our first daughter. My husband and I carry a very rare gene that makes very sick babies. And so our first daughter, when I was about 6 months along, we found out that she was going to pass away. And so I had to stay pregnant for a month and a half, knowing that she was going to pass. And she was very active. She kicked me all the time. She moved all the time. And it was just like a constant reminder that once she was outside my body, that she wasn't going to be with us anymore. And so I think that's where it really started. And we subsequently lost another baby girl. We had a miscarriage in between. We lost another baby girl. And then 4 years later, we lost a baby boy, all to the same rare genetic disorder. But the miracle that came out of that was that we adopted 2 girls and a boy. So everything that was taken from us was given back. And our twins, our twin girls were born on Christmas Day, which was a miracle in itself. That was the Christmas that I wanted to just dismiss. I wanted to cancel Christmas, act like it had never happened. And my husband's cousin had had a baby about a month after our first daughter was born. And so he was having all these firsts, and I was having to, watch her be a mother and watch her have him in her arms, and my arms were so empty. But what I came to realize was that none of that was her fault. It wasn't the baby's fault. It wasn't my fault. It wasn't anybody's fault. It just was. And I needed to be happy and be joyful for them. And when I released that, then we got the call and our girls were here. So same thing with our son. I mean, I finally came to the realization that I would never have my own biological children. And as soon as I released that, our son came. So he's been a challenge. He was diagnosed with autism at the age of 4. But again, I was able to go back to school and change the whole trajectory of my career, become an occupational therapist, which I've been able to work with children like him, and I've been able to better raise him. And he is now attending public high school, which I never thought he would be able to do.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah, he's done so well. And not that we don't have our challenges still, but he's doing better than I ever thought he was going to do. And my husband and I, our marriage suffered because you can imagine, after losing multiple children and having a special needs child, the girls were born with cocaine in their system. So they were a little bit of a challenge in the beginning too. I became very depressed, very full of anxiety. Whenever I looked at my kids, I just thought that they were going to be taken. Like, I came from a place of loss. And so that's what I thought I was always going to have, was I was going to lose them too. So just riddled by anxiety. And it wasn't until my husband was actually unfaithful in our marriage that I figured out that I didn't love myself. So how could I love him? How could I be the best mother to our kids? How could I be a friend to anybody? And that really set me on the path of self-love and self-discovery, which changed everything. I mean, it changed my physical, my mental, my spiritual. And so then when I was diagnosed with cancer, um, and that was in 2015, so 10 years ago. It'll actually be 10 years this August, or this actually 10 years this July, because they found the tumor on my birthday, which is July 15th, which was not the happiest birthday I ever had. But I realized that if I hadn't started taking care of myself when I never would have been able to recover from that, from the surgeries, and rebuild my physical health again, because I had to be on a walker and a cane. I was months not putting weight on that leg. So that was a whole another journey. And now here we are. Wrote it all in a book. I've been speaking on stages. I've been doing podcasts and living the life that I've always dreamed of. And I think I told somebody else the other day that I don't know that I could really truly say that I wanted to go through all of it again, but I wouldn't change it because it happened exactly as it was supposed to. So
Wow. No, though, sorry, I just got choked over there. Though I've heard this part before, let me just reiterate what you heard, what I just heard. You lost multiple children in a span of 4 to 5 years. You adopted cocaine, um,
addicted.
born addicted kids. I mean, which was there in the system. So twins. You had adopted a boy who had autism, which got you to having anxiety and depression, which followed also because of the challenges, your husband being unfaithful to you, and to put as a cherry on the topping, you got cancer also. And you say life is a miracle. So, what I heard was life was not happening to you, for you, but for you. And you just mentioned, would you have that way the trajectory or the journey went? Look over again, you're ready to bring it on. But I sincerely wish you the success all after this. So it comes to this particular point is that yes, you have created something. You have gone through, I mean, challenges are just a small word, but you've gone through quite a bit. How did it accumulate to this particular book eat your emotions?
Eat your feelings. It's
Feeling, sorry.
because it's because, which is emotions, but I was stuffing down all my feelings with food. And I actually didn't realize that I was doing that until probably maybe 5 years ago, if I'm being real honest with myself. But I didn't really start changing it until probably about 2 years ago. But I didn't want to relive everything that I had been through. You know, we stopped going out into the community. My husband and I, we started keeping to ourselves. We started isolating, and we weren't doing it on purpose. But when you go out into the community and you go into friend groups and you go to church or wherever you are, there's all this small talk, and people talk about, where you're from and how many kids you have. And, and it just always ended up to be this sad sob story of, well, we lost 3 babies, and then we adopted these special needs kids. And then, we just sounded like we were just complaining all the time. And people didn't understand, you know what I mean? So it's like we couldn't really relate to other people in their quote unquote normal lives because ours was so different. And going through those kinds of traumas really changes you as a person. And I know that it made me stronger, but like I said, when I wasn't really processing what I had been through, I didn't want to talk about anything. And I gained a lot of weight because all I wanted to do was eat. But I really started to realize that, like, when I would go to the pantry or I would be making dinner or whatever I would be doing, I equated the feeling with a certain type of food. And
Hmm.
so when kind of like my son, and I think that probably started with my son because he was very sensory and his sensory system was very dysregulated. And so when I got my master's in occupational therapy, of course, I better understood how the body worked in the brain and the gut connection and all that kind of thing. And so I realized that, like, when I was anxious, I wanted something crunchy or salty because it gave me that input in my mouth. And then when I was sad, I would want like a cake or a pudding substance, like that kind of feeling in your mouth. And so I was self-soothing by the textures, I guess you can say, because I've never been a drinker. I wasn't a smoker. I never did drugs. Um, I guess I can probably say thank you to my dad, who was I had a little bit of an abusive, traumatic childhood.
Hmm.
So
Okay.
I always wanted to feel in control of my body and that I had control over what I was doing. And so that's why I never drank and I never did drugs, because I didn't want to feel that way. A lot of people do that as an escape, but that scared me, that if I wasn't going to remember, what happened. And like our friend, Josh Berglund, and I thank you for having him on your podcast because his story is just unbelievable.
True.
We have we've developed a friendship, and he's actually gave me praise, and he's on the back of my book jacket now, which is just, crazy. Like I said, the friendships that you make. But his story was different. He turned to drugs and alcohol and all kinds of other things, and mine was food. So I think we all have, especially if you have an addictive personality, which a lot of us do. um, it's like anything else. I mean, I just happen to be addicted to food, just like somebody else is addicted to alcohol.
Wow, that opens up a lot of question. So one of the main question that would be that let's go just a little past 2 years. What were the steps that you took? Because it was not just overnight. It would be because I have been in that game of working towards a certain goal, falling down, working, falling down, and a lot of times giving up, but then again not giving up. So, what were the steps, Christina, that you started adapting that made a difference to who you are?
I think it started with movement. I needed to get outside of, you know, the feelings the emotions that I was having. So again, I became a little bit of addicted to the gym or to
Mm,
lifting weights, because that kind of like you with your marathons, I like to lift heavy weights. So that's what calms my nervous system. That's what, because I used to run, but after I had the leg surgery, my leg doesn't like that, the pounding of it. So it's kind of harsh on my body now, but I can lift heavy weights because I can control the environment, and I can make sure that my posture is and my form is good, and it calms me. So that was really where it was started. But I just started writing, and I think that's, people often ask, like, where do I start? You just got to start. Just write down a couple words, a couple sentences, and once you start to process your feelings, you're going to realize that it wasn't as scary as you thought it was going to be. You've already been through the hard thing. You've already come past it. And when you think about it, you're not reliving it again. You're just going to move through it. So I
Hmm.
think that's what people need to understand.
Actually, that's a segue to my next question is that because you had mentioned a few moments that earlier that you have been in the recent past with a lot of podcasts, and as your book is coming out, a lot of people are talking, and this conversation about why this book would have you're going back through the recesses of your mind, remembering what you've gone through when you're thinking about this, how is the impact at this point of time? I know that okay, that happened, and life is for now. What's the present? Being present. But when you think about it or when you're talking about it, how do you create a mental boundary that does not allow this deluge of the old emotions to seep back into your daily existence?
I think it's the intention. And I've been working a lot on my energy and like who I let into my energy field and who I give my energy to. And so the intention behind why I'm doing this podcast, this isn't about me anymore. It's about whoever's listening. It's about the person on the other side of the screen, like what they're going to gain from my experience, and just to let them see that you can still have joy even
Hmm.
when you've experienced tragedy.
It's for a lot of people that would be still unfathomable because for them the way they look at it, of course they have got to change their mindset. Life is happening to me. It's that particular victim and the martyr. But Christina, what could be, if I could ask you, like just 3 or 4 steps that could allow them to elevate themselves from a victim and martyr? Because from the journey that you took me through, you had all the reasons of being a victim, a martyr, and you found your release in indulging in the craving of the food that you just went on putting it inside. So, when you talk about that, what would be just 3 or 4 steps that you could allow people to just pause and make a difference in what their mindset is?
I think you need to find a community. That's been the biggest thing. And that was hard for me, letting go of relationships that weren't, and it wasn't that they weren't positive. I mean, I don't want to say that because I'm sure a lot of my friends are going to going to hear these podcasts, but um, I loved them and they loved me, but I didn't even know what I needed. So I couldn't give them what they needed, as a friendship.
Hmm.
So you got to find that community of the people that are going to uplift you, that they've walked this road before, you know what I mean? Like somebody who's already been through it. And so nothing that you say is going to shock them, or, we think some crazy things when we've been through trauma, and you think you're the only one that thinks that way, or why am I thinking that? That sounds crazy, but nothing that anybody has thought is going to surprise me. I've thought it all. So, um, but I think also just if you pray, and whatever that looks like for you, but I think you need to have something that's bigger than you, and to realize that, like you said, it's not happening to you, it's happening for you. So there's always a lesson in everything that we go through. So, I mean, it can be just as simple as starting with your breath. I mean,
Hmm.
that I did that a lot, because my nervous system was so dysregulated. And you wouldn't think that, you know, breathing in for 4 seconds, holding it for four, breathing out for four, you know what I mean? Like you wouldn't think that that would
The
calm
box breathing, yes. Hmm.
the box breathing. It really, really does. So, I mean, just something as simple as that. And then just maybe writing down, the first of your day or the end of your day, um, how you feel or how you think you feel. You may not even know how you feel. So just write down anything, write down one word. But that's it. You just got to start somewhere.
Beautiful. But here again, as you have seen the struggles wherein the mind or the ego takes control, we may have friends, or sometimes we are in that space of darkness, if I could say that word. We don't want to see the light. What
Yeah, I've
could
been
be?
there.
So, what could be? It's not like a magic word or magic mantra or a magic prayer that says that, hey, God, show me the light. And as for what I've also heard is that because when we pray or whether we are talking about the community, it's having that faith
Hmm.
that we are not alone in this. What could be something like that that could be told to somebody who's maybe listening to the podcast and looking through the dark recesses of the mind? What could be something that allows them to just turn the switch on or maybe just light a candle?
I think that starting with podcasts just like this is one of the biggest things these days. I mean, that's it's a different time we live in now than when I was in my 20s.
Hmm?
And there's so many things that are at your fingertips, literally on your phone. There's meditations and music. I listen to a lot of, I don't know if you've heard of binaural music,
Mm. Yep.
but it helps to the both sides of the brain to work
Yep.
together, but it's very calming. And so just something like that, just something that really calms your nervous system. I think there's a lot to be said about not only what you're putting in your body, but what you're feeding your mind. If you're listening to, um, and I like some good heavy metal music, but it's anxiety promoting provoking. You know what I mean? Like there's a time and a place. So if you want to calm your nervous system, you got to find those things that calm it. So I don't like to watch the news. I mean, I like to know what's happening. I like to know what's going on, but I'm not consuming it daily. I'm not,
Hmm.
you know what I mean? I'm not consuming it all the time. It's in the books that I read. I love to read stories of other people like you that have come through adversity and are full of joy. And I love to read autobiographies and all kinds of self-help. And so I think it's what you're feeding your mind. You really got to start looking at. It's not just one thing. I think that people want a magic pill. There's no magic pill.
Exactly.
It's
Exactly.
it's
Uh,
work.
and I totally can, I mean, I can see the reflection because when I started this podcast about resilience plus rise, which was in last November, and I'm really blessed by the number of people who have graced the screen to, and I realized, okay, I had problems, but when talk to other amazing humans, I realize, whoa. And again, as I say, is that if this podcast, even if it touches one person, I've succeeded in what I do. And again, it's a community that's we are building up. Like you mentioned about Joshua Burgel, it just came out of the blue, and now because of that, now he's also connected with so many other people that he can help around. So this is just a ripple effect. Just being mindful of the time. But yeah, you can take your time. Why should people read your book?
Well, I'm giving $2 from every book I sell. $2 is going to go to A21, which is a global organization in the fight against human trafficking. So I want to make sure that everybody does know that. And besides that, I just want people to take care of themselves. That's really the through line of the book, is that it starts with self-care. You can't take care of anybody else until you take care and learn to love yourself. And so I've got several frameworks in the book that different just I these were things that I was doing them, but I didn't realize that I was doing them until I sort of gave them a name. So but I love a good acronym. So I got several acronyms in there for people to use that hopefully they can implement in their own life.
Hmm. Okay. So that sounds pretty good. And again, when you talk about loving themselves, I believe a lot of times people have forgotten about really loving themselves, the true love for their own self. And again, as you have been talking about spirituality and God, etc., wherein it says, love your neighbor as yourself. People forget, okay, loving your neighbor is one particular thing, but then they forgot. And of course, a lot of times people confuse selfishness with self love. And it was two different elements, absolutely. Any parting words before I can conclude this talk?
Just thank you so much for having me back. I'm super excited to get this book out into the world, and I just hope that it helps people.
Okay. Guys, I will be putting out Christina's links when the book is going to be coming up. She's having a Zoom session
Mhm. Yeah.
open to everybody, and there'll be a discount initially. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, there
Oh,
will not.
okay. Sorry.
Yeah, there will. Well, just because I want to give as much as I can to A21.
821. 821. Okay. So, guys, this is for a cause. And here, what we are doing is that we are talking to a fighter who have gone through the grinds of life, who has gone through the adversities of life, but believed at some point in her life, she realized she could rise, and she rose like a phoenix. To guys who do not know much about Christina, also is that she has been voted as a woman, correct me, woman to watch for in 2025. By she means Business Magazine. She's also one of the top 40 speakers shaping the future and Voice of Changes magazine. So here it is just not a person who talks, but who delivers. Yes, she is a leader and she imparts that particular spirit to everybody who is listening to her talks or the podcast or her keynote speaking, etc. So, Christina, thank you so very much. Best of luck for the success of your book. Guys, do buy it. If you feel that it may not impact you, I know it will impact somebody else that you know. So pick it up. Make a difference. Christina, thank you so very much.
Thank you.